you guys doing? My name is Abel. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Brady Sensibaugh, and today we're going to be talking about a little bit about boxing, a little bit about my friend Brady. He's currently a trainer. He used to be a pro boxer. We go way back to high school. So yeah. Today I'm bringing Brady into to the show, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So yeah, Brady. Like I said before, we've been friends for a long time now, since high school. And, I think that the one thing that we always had in common was just boxing. I think that that's the first thing that sparked up our friendship. And since then, you and I, we always been passionate about it, no matter what. So yeah, Brady, first question I want to ask you, it's just simple. What made you be so passionate about boxing? How long have you been involved in boxing, and and what brought you to being from a pro boxer all the way to a trainer now?
Yeah, so everything started around 2004. So I was about 10 years old, and I was actually playing baseball. And I was a decent player, nothing like you, Abel, but I could play a little bit. And I switched leagues. And when I switched leagues, they put me on this team that it was supposed to be a advanced league, but they added this one team that wasn't. It was a bunch of kids that pretty much never played before, and they just added me. And I'll never forget, this is the only time this ever happened to me, but we had 16 games that year, and we went 0-16. And when we went 0-16, I was like, to my parents, I was like, Dad, I can't be on this like team sport thing anymore. I just can't do it, because I would get frustrated with other players, and you're not supposed to do that. So I wanted to do an individual sport. So I asked him, I said, can I do boxing? Right. And you could tell he was kind of hesitant about it. 10-year-old son. I'm sure he didn't want his son to get punched in the face, So I had to ask for about a couple months, I would say, consistently. And then finally, one day, he said, you know what? Okay, let's try it. I know a guy that has a gym. So he took me up to, it was called Brooklyn Boxing Club. It was a pretty established gym. Some good fighters there, good local fighters, Jesse Niccolo, Nick Kissner, Mike Pascal. And that's where I started. And from there, that's kind of where the first day I walked in that gym, I loved it. I love the smell, the sweat, the dirtiness of the gym. It's probably the dirtiest. Think about COVID now. That's probably why I haven't had COVID, because I went through that gym. It was so nasty. But that's where you kind of learn to love the sport of boxing, the real sport of boxing. Not the fitness aspect of it, just the real grittiness of boxing. And then that's kind of where I kind of became a student at the same time. From the time I started, I became a student. I think when you become a student of a sport, you that's when you love something. When you become a student of something, I think the love just follows naturally. And I think from the beginning, even as a little kid, I think I always wanted to eventually be a trainer or be a coach, and for me, it just naturally rose to that.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's honestly, that's what brings everybody, be passionate about, any kind of sport, just like myself, I don't have much background on boxing, but I've always been passionate about it. I grew up around it, coming from a country like Puerto Rico, where it has produced a lot of champions, and it's been, next to baseball as a top sport. I've been around it, but like you said, just like myself, when I walked in the baseball field, I was always been, a student of it. And to this day, I still am, even to my last day. So playing professional baseball, I've always been the kind of student. And that's what drives you to learn more. That's what drives you to improve, just like yourself. you always kind of knew that you want to be able to coach. So you open your ears more, and you were able to listen to those people that were trying to guide you to the right direction. You know what I mean? Just like myself, I mean, I'm taking, the route of coaching now. I've been a player my whole life, but, as a coach, I feel like it's always going to be, some tough moments when you're coaching, just like yourself when you're training. But at the same time, from all the preparation that you've done since you were a kid, it made it easier transition. You know what I mean? You've always been a student, just like myself, and that makes it easier. And the biggest thing is to learn how to explain things, how to overcome adversity that comes up. And for me, I mean, that's what, coming from a background that I was never the biggest guy in the field. I may have some talent, but at the same time, I always had challenges. Just like the sport of boxing, it's one-on-one, and just like the baseball field out there, at the end of the day, I mean, you have to produce. So if you're not willing to learn, if you're not willing to be a student, you're always gonna be stuck. So I'm so happy to learn that. I'm so happy to know that you have the same kind of mentality. That's one of the reasons why I want to bring you in. I know that you right now, you're currently training, you're a trainer over at this gym over in DC at Headbangers.
Yep.
I see that, going through the website and Facebook and everything, I see that, you guys have some great boxers come in sometimes, like, Gervonta, Lamont Peterson, Austin Trout. I even saw some videos of Adrian Broner. I think that, just that itself shows the kind of quality of gym it is, and that you're surrounded by people like that actually know boxing, that actually know, what it takes to be at the next level. So tell me a little bit about your experience over at Headbangers, and, and just your boxers and everything. What have you learned so far? Your adversity and everything, how you were able to overcome it. Yeah.
Yeah, so my coaching experience started in Arizona when I was in the Marine Corps. So I served 4 years in the Marine Corps, and while I was in there, I got a pretty bad knee injury, and I couldn't really train myself at the time. So I wanted to coach. So I found a local boxing gym there. I said, hey, I have about 10 years of experience. I just want to coach kids, help you guys out. So the guy said, yeah, no problem. So I coached there for probably a few years. And when I got out, I was just trying to get settled back in, back to the East Coast and stuff. So I took probably a year off, but then I missed the sport so much. So I was actually at a boxing show, and a buddy of mine that I knew, it was like the first show I went back. So I got out in February 2018, and probably December of 2018, I ran into someone and said, hey, I need help coaching at the gym. So this was a separate gym, and I really didn't want to help them out. I wanted to go to the Headbangers to help Barry out, Barry Hunter, who runs the Headbangers. But at the time, this guy said, hey, I have like 30 kids under me. I really need help already. So I said, okay, I'll help you out for a little bit. So I was there probably a little less than a year, coached a few kids, even got a national champion under my belt for my first national champion there. And then eventually the gym situation wasn't what it was supposed to be. It's sad, but there's a lot of gyms that have so much potential, but because of the gym leadership, it just doesn't reach that potential. And it wasn't the situation for me. From the get-go, I wanted to learn from Barry. Barry Hunter is the head trainer and kind of the genius of the Headbangers. So what I ended up doing was, I was at a national tournament. I ran into Barry, and we haven't seen each other probably since the Junior Olympics, where he took me and worked my corner. So it's like, hey, listen, come over. We need help, and gives you opportunity to learn. And that's really what I wanted to be. I'm only, at the time, I think I was only 24, 25, 24. And there's so much more you can learn. You can always learn so much more. So, there's not another place, I think, in the area that you can learn more than under Barry Hunter and Boogie. Patrice Harris, who is also a coach over there. So that's what I did. I went over there and started helping out. And my knowledge, I think in August it would be 2 years. My knowledge from then has grown. I just became a sponge, and that's what you're supposed to do. When you're around fighters like Lamont Peterson, world champion, trainers like Barry Hunter, Boogie Harris, just be a sponge, because every word they say you can learn from. Every little movement they teach you can learn from. And if you don't like something that they say, that helps you too. You take that out of your toolbox. You know what I mean? So you learn so much over there, and you learn so much from the fighters. So right now we have Patrick Harris, who's Boogie's son, who's 19-0, who's really the up and coming 135 pounder in the world. He's the one that everybody sleeps on. I've known Patrick since we were 10 years old. We're actually the same age, so it's cool to be able to kind of help someone out that I grew up with. So, and then amateurs, we have Nasheed Smith, who took fourth at the Olympic trials. He'll be fighting at the nationals. I'm taking him and Quincy Williams to the nationals in March, USA's, and Nasheed's number 4 in the country and Quincy's number 2 in the country. So there are two guys that, we expect great things from. So just to be able to be around these fighters, it helps you as a coach.
Exactly. No, I mean, yeah, those kind of things is what, keeps your passion going. You know what I mean? Being surrounded by those kind of people that know what they're talking about. Even if they don't agree with their boxer sometimes, people like Lamont Peterson or whatever it is, I mean, you're always going to be able to learn anything about it, and honestly, I mean, for me, I feel like I learned the most from my mistakes. Sometimes, so when I had disagreements with some of my players or teammates, I learned how to overcome those things. You know what I mean? How to respond to them, how to be able to adjust to some situations during the game. In your case, during the boxing fight. So like I said, those are always things that are going to keep you hungry, going to keep you being a student. And there's nothing better than being surrounded by people like that. So, I want to jump a little bit ahead. I'm glad that I was able to hear a little bit about your gym and the things that you learned. But I just want to get your opinion on the current state of boxing. I know we know right now that, the guy that's the cash cow right now is Canelo. That's the kind of person that's, that everybody talks about. He just recently fought Arvin Gildrum, and I know that was supposed to be a mandatory fight and everything, but what are your thoughts on him? What are your thoughts on just the whole state of boxing right now?
Canelo's special. He's kind of a once in a generation talent, and I think he's proof that to be at the level that Canelo's at, it's not just skill. It takes some hard work. He's the best because no one outworks him. And that's just plain and simple. He's skillful, but that's not why he's at the place that he's at right now. He's not the cash cow of boxing just because of his skills. He works so hard, man. And just to talk about real briefly about his last fight, the moment was just too big for Ildrum. I think, sometimes you have the biggest opportunity of your life and you have two options. You can sell out and just put all your chips in the middle of the table, or, you can check in. And, it's sad, but, and I'm not one to call out anybody's heart, but I think he lost that fight long before he walked in those ropes. And when you have the type of energy that Canelo has, I think he can win fights like that way before the first bell rings. And I think that's what happened in this fight. Ildrum can always go ahead and say, hey, I fought the best, fought for a world title. But I think he probably woke up the next day and probably regretted that fight. He,
Yeah.
could have done more maybe. But the right man won. I don't think that
Yeah.
fight, regardless of what Ildrum was going to do, would have changed much. But now, all roads go to Canelo, and it leads to Canelo, and I think this Billy Joe Saunders fight will be his hardest fight to date. I think this fight is going to be a lot harder than people think it is. The one weakness I would say in Canelo is he usually has to be planted when he punches, meaning his feet. He doesn't have the fastest feet, and his feet has to be planted before he throws. With Billy Joe Saunders' movement, awkwardness, and slickness, and speed, I think it's going to be a very interesting fight in the first 6 rounds or so.
Yeah.
I expect Canelo to break him down after the 8th, but I still think it'd be a decision win for Canelo. But I think it'd be a good fight. I think it'd be a fight that we haven't seen Canelo in for a while. I think it would be a fight that matches a Trout fight or the probably more so the Trout fight, and maybe the Lara fight, being southpaw, being a mover. But I think it's going to be a great fight. I really do. I'm really excited for that fight.
Yeah, no, me too. Me too. I mean, I know that, some people are complaining about the Jordan fight, but, at the same time, I mean, if this is mandatory, if this is way to get to Billy Joe Saunders, I mean, I'm okay with it. As a trainer, that sometimes when you're a champion, you got to take those mandatory fights, even though you expect those mandatory fights to be more exciting. But at the same time, like you said, maybe the lights were too bright for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the first time that he's fought somebody in Canelo's, caliber. And, just like Colin Smith, that he was a great fighter too. Same thing. I feel like he's never faced anybody like Canelo. And when you're in those bright lights, when you're, the show of the town, it could take a toll for you, for you mentally. And like you said, maybe he, both of those guys maybe lost a fight before they even walked in.
Yeah.
And that's just part of boxing. The mental part of it is huge. You know what I mean? If you're not fully concentrated and into your fighter, instead of the things that are going around, interviews and all that stuff, it can get to you. So that's why I'm very excited about this Billy Joe Saunders fight. I know they have a schedule for May 8th. I think that, like you said, I think Canelo, he's the kind of guy, he's slow on his feet. He's very slick. He has really good waist movement. And I feel like Canelo always had the most trouble with those kind of fighters. You know what I mean? Like you talk about Lara, obviously, a guy like Floyd, people that are quick on their feet, that always stay moving, because with Canelo, you don't want to be standing. You don't want to go toe to toe with him. I mean, he's the kind of fighter that can knock you out with any kind of punch. You know what I mean? The only person that I feel like that was able to withstand his punishment was Triple G. Triple G's kind of guy. He has, I think after they fought twice, I feel like he has the best chin in the game. The shots that he was taking from Canelo, even though I think Triple G definitely won the first fight. Second fight was a little closer. Everybody has their own opinion on it. I'm a Triple G guy. I've always been, just like I've always been a Pacquiao guy.
Yeah.
So, for me, honestly, I just want to see a good fight. I just want Billy Joe Saunders to respond to those bright lights. Billy Joe, he hasn't fought anybody in Canelo's, caliber, because there's not a lot of people like Canelo's caliber right now. Like you said, he's a kind of, he's a person who he is because of, not just because of what he does in the ring, but what he does when he's at the gym. You know what I mean? I always watch some of Canelo's training sessions, and that guy, he's a champion for a reason. And I think that he works as what he's best at. He's learned so much since the Floyd fight. I mean, he was able to grow each year as he kept fighting. You know what I mean? Even he even learned from the Lara fight. That was a very close fight, but I think that he's the kind of guy that each fight you're gonna see something different. He tends to adjust to a lot of his fighters, and I think that's something that's amazing about Canelo that you don't see nowadays. So I hope he that this fight coming out will be great. I know he has Caleb Plant probably looking at fighting him in September, I think. and hopefully he'll get to fight Benavidez sometime too. That's another person that I want to see him against. I mean, that guy Benavidez is a monster, very fast guy. And he's still very young, so I think that for me that would be the dream matchup. Hopefully in December. We don't know yet. I know Benavidez has a fight coming up in a week or so, and hopefully Benavidez goes and fights Jermall Charlo right afterwards. That's another thing that's in talks right now, but I want to see Benavidez and Canelo in 168. So, we'll see. It's a lot of good things coming up. So right now, I know that another hot topic right now is in the lightweight division. We got a lot of great fighters in there. That whole it's stacked. Lightweight is for me. Yeah, it's my favorite weight class right now. You got people like Teofimo Lopez right now that he's top of the mountain right there. But you also has Lomachenko. He's still Lomachenko even though he lost Lopez. I think he's still one of the best fighters in the world. And we also have people like Gervonta Davis, obviously Ryan Garcia, David Haney. There is a bunch of champions in that division, so I'm pretty excited about. But in your opinion, what do you think about that lightweight division? What would be your dream matchups? Who do you think is the best fighter right now in that division? And yeah, I mean, who would you like to see Lopez fight next to challenge him?
Yeah, so I'm not a Lopez fan.
Yeah.
I guess naturally being a Lomachenko fan, I'm not going to be a Lopez fan. He's a great fighter though, great young fighter, confident. He can box, he can bang, and I give him credit. He beat the man. To beat a man, you got to beat the man. He beat the man. I do think they need to run that back, regardless of what Lopez says. When you beat the pound for pound king, and at the time, Ring Magazine had Lomachenko number one pound for pound over Canelo. I think when you beat the pound for pound king, out of respect, I think it's kind of an unspoken norm. Run that back, you know what I mean? Especially in that type of fight. So look, if you look at that fight real quick, first 6 rounds, Lomachenko didn't do nothing. And that's his fault. No one blamed but himself, but he didn't do anything. He pretty much gave up the first 6 rounds, came back, started really dominating Lopez in the second half of that fight. But it was just too little too late. And I do believe him when he says it was a shoulder. You hate to see excuses. I'm not taking nothing away from Lopez. Lopez was the better man that night, without a doubt. But I would like to see that run back. I would like to see that Garcia Tank fight. I think that's kind of naturally where it's going. I think Haney is kind of the odd man out in that situation. But it looks like Haney might be able to get a fight with Lomachenko, which if he beats Lomachenko, then that puts his name inside the bubble instead of being outside the bubble. So I love it. I love that situation. When we talk about who's the best, I'm kind of biased. I got to go with my man Tank only because I competed against him. I fought him twice when we were kids. So and I'm, we've been friends for a long time. So I'd be wrong to say anybody than Tank. So I would love to see Tank sweep that division. I think he can too. I think his hardest fight, believe it or not, would be Lomachenko. I think style-wise, Lomachenko can frustrate you if you allow him to. And if Tank gets frustrated, anything can happen. So I think that's his toughest fight in that area. I think he knocks Lopez out. I think Lopez would try to trade with Tank. I think he would be confident enough to trade with Tank. And I don't. You can't trade with the man. He punches too. He just punch. He's 135 and he could knock out junior middleweights. He just has this freakish power, and he always did as a kid. He had that type of power too. So I would like to see the Garcia fight because I think Garcia gives him a different type of fight. Garcia would have to stay on the outside trying to catch Tank coming in, but I think once Tank cuts that distance, doesn't get caught with that right hand, I think Tank would just rough him up and batter him in the inside.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, just like you said, I think with Ryan Garcia's last fight against Luke Campbell, you saw that, he was able to get up from a knockout, but you saw that, when he gets caught, he can go down, and I feel like with Tank Davis, he's a whole different animal. I feel like that Tank Davis would just try to finish him right there. He's not going to let him, get out of the ropes. Not gonna let him finish the round if he sees him drop, and that's something that I love about Tank. I think, like you said, I think Loma is still, for me, he's still one of the best pound for pounds, even though his loss against Lopez, and it's something that happened to any fighter. I think that he went back to the drawing board after he saw. He was like, well, this is not me. This is not how I always fight. I mean, I've always been the instigator. I've always been the guy coming forward. And I think that matchup, I think we want to see that rematch against Lopez. I think it will be a way better fight. I think that Loma definitely beat him. I think that Loma's gonna come with a better plan. He's gonna learn from the mistakes. He's gonna watch that fight over again, the one that he fought, first fight against Lopez, and and who knows? I mean, this is a fighting game. Anything can happen. I think that Loma has the power and the skills to beat anybody in the division, but at the same time, they're so stacked with Tank Davis that he's, I think he's the most talented person in that division as well. And you also got Ryan Garcia and David Haney. David Haney is another champion that I think should definitely get a shot after some of these guys fight. I mean, I would like to see the winner between Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia against David Haney. Definitely would love to see that rematch, and at the end of the day, I would love to see a unification fight in the lightweight division. That definitely would be the top seller right now. But I want to jump into another division. I mean, you got the welterweight. Welterweight has been my favorite division since I was growing up. Having great fighters like Cotto, Pacquiao, Floyd. That's that was the most stacked division for a long time. That's what kept boxing on top. And I think right now with Terrence Crawford trying to seek that fight with Spence, and then the Spence says that he wants to take it, and then they all both back out. They both want to be the A side. I think that they're both the A side. I think Spence earned his right to say that he wants to take the whole bag, but at the same time, Terrence Crawford, he's still at the top. He's been the champion, the longest, and I feel like with promoters and all that stuff, that's one thing that always gets in the way in boxing. You know what I mean? That's one thing that I feel like always gets in between of us seeing the dream matchups to come up. But for me, I mean, that's just a tough matchup to call. I think Errol Spence is such a skilled fighter. He reminds me a little bit of Tank, and even a little bit of Canelo. I mean, he has the power, he has the stamina of it. I'm so happy to see him bounce back after that huge accident that he had, and just go up to the ring and fight somebody like Garcia. I think that just shows his will, his guts to be able to just come up and fight another champion. I mean, Garcia is no joke. Garcia, he has a lot of power in his hands. I think that was something that was for it could have been a risk for Spence. I mean, after you get into a huge accident like that, go up in welter and to just go ahead and fight a champion or a former champion, that is something not a lot of people will do. So, and Terrence Crawford, I feel like he just haven't had the chance to really fight somebody in the caliber of Spence. But Terrence Crawford, he's a monster. I mean, he's been the pound for pound guy for the longest time, until Canelo came in and started knocking people out again. And I feel like, for me, that would be my dream matchup at welterweight. I mean, obviously we got Pacquiao that, he's still, at well, how old is he? 41, 42 now? I mean, yeah. I mean, the man,
he 42. He might be 43, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, that man came back and he beat Keith Thurman. He knocked him out. She'll show them that he's still the one of the top dogs. You know what I mean? Obviously, he's not the Pacquiao of old, but at the same time, Pacquiao's the kind of guy you can't mess with, and he can. Pacquiao can pretty much he can knock out either Terrence Crawford or Spence if they get caught up. You know what I mean? And that's something that you always got to watch out for. But what are your thoughts on the welterweight? What are your thoughts on Terrence Crawford against Spence? What are your thoughts on Pacquiao being one of the top dogs in that division still? And yeah, who would you like to see next? And then after that fight, who would you like to see for maybe a unification fight?
Yeah, so just to, I guess, speak on Crawford and Spence first. They're two, I think you hit the nail right on its head. They're both top dogs, and I think when you talk about the negotiation process, I think Spence is 100% in the wrong. When you go on national television and state, we're given whatever we see fit, 70-30, 60-40. Not only is that just wrong, it's honestly disrespectful to Crawford.
Yeah. Yeah.
That if I've ever seen a 50-50 fight, and what I mean 50-50, I mean money wise, that's a 50-50 fight. There's just no doubt about it. I don't think Crawford deserves the edge. I don't think Spence deserves the edge in the negotiation process, because in the real fight, it's a 50-50 fight. I can see both fighters winning. I edge, and when I say edge, I mean very closely, and I might change my mind if the fight ever happens and I see how training camp goes. But I think I edge Crawford. I think Crawford is a little bit more versatile, and I think he can do a little bit more than what Spence can do. He can move, he can fight southpaw, he can fight right-hander, and he's a dog too. Spence is a dog. Yeah. Crawford's a dog too.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's a 50-50 fight. I think if I had to edge someone, I would say Crawford. But I hope the fight happens. If that fight does not happen, I'd like to see Spence against Pacquiao, because I think Pacquiao has one more great fight in him. I believe Pacquiao has a legitimate shot of not only being in that fight, but having a chance to pull the upset. I style-wise, I don't know what it is, but my stomach just tells me that fight is a lot closer than people think it is. And on Crawford's side, I would, as a advisor, I would not advise to it, but as a fan, I want to see it, is Sean Porter. This might be blow your listeners' mind, but I think Sean Porter would beat Crawford. Wow. I think style-wise, I think he's too big, too strong for him, whereas Spence was strong enough to hold off Porter. But I think Porter would rough Crawford up, and I think he would win a decision. So as an advisor, I would say don't take that fight to Crawford. But as a fan, I would love to see the fight. Plus, I'm a big Sean Porter fan as a person. He's one of the best fighters I've ever met. Really good person. But that division stacked too, without a doubt. And there's upcoming guys there, and so I like to see it. The 68 division too is stacked, because you have Canelo if he stays there. Canelo can go to 60, can maybe go back to 54, whatever he wants to do. But you have coming up on ESPN. I think it's in April 24th is on my mind, is Edgar Berlanga. So you have a up and coming Puerto Rican fighter. I think he's New York based, but definitely represents Puerto Rico. And he's fighting a good friend of mine, Damon Nicholson, who's 23-3, 20 knockouts. Now Berlanga, as you know, hasn't been out of that second round yet. So when people ask me what fight are you looking forward to, it'd be that fight in the 68-pound division, because it's going to be fireworks. You got two guys that can punch. And Berlanga's never been outside of the first round, so I like to see what happens if my buddy Damon can get out of that first round and take him to deep waters.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's that there's a lot of weight classes that are stacked. From the super middleweight all the way down to lightweight. I mean, those are just fights that we all want to see. You know what I mean? And especially from this past year, 2020, where we had the COVID happened, where it stopped a lot of great fights from happening. I pushed back Pacquiao from me fighting 2020. Pacquiao, I mean, every year that goes by, it gets a little older, but with his kind of conditioning that we've never seen, like you said, you never know. I do think that Pacquiao, like you said, has a great shot and beating anybody in that division at welterweight. You know what I mean? He just showed himself against Keith Urban, somebody that had that power, amazing power, and you even saw it in the fight. I mean, Pacquiao still has that chin. You know what I mean? Obviously, we've seen Pacquiao drop before, but seeing fight against these young guys and still be able to knock him out and be able to come out with the upsets, it's something that you don't see anymore. You know what I mean? And like you said, in a super middleweight, you guys have Benavidez. You got a Puerto Rican fighter too that he hasn't. I saw him fight about, thinking like a month and a half ago. He just keeps knocking people out in the first round. That's just nuts. You know what I mean? You haven't seen that since the old days. So I'm excited to see your buddy fight him. I mean, I think that, after that fight, I would like to see him fight against Benavidez. Whoever wins out of that fight. Obviously, right now Canelo is just title chasing. He has his two championship belts in mind right now with Billy O. Saunders and Caleb Plant. But that having that flexibility of Canelo being able to stay in middleweight, super middleweight, or go down to middleweight, I think it could set him up for great matchups. You know what I mean? And I think that I would love to see my dream matchup in middleweight 160. I would like to see Charlo against Triple G. I know that I've been listening a little bit. I heard that Triple G just turned down the Charlo offer. But for me personally, I think that if we want boxing to be a top like it used to be, and we MMA is right over there with them, being able to put the matchups that everybody wants to see. I mean, if we could get Crawford against Spence this year sometime, hopefully early next year, and and see that Triple G against Charlo, or even Triple G trilogy against Canelo. You got somebody else in the middleweight class like Demetrius Andrade, that he is a monster too. He's another guy that people don't talk about much, but he is. I mean, he's ranked number 3 right now in the middleweight division. So it's a lot of great fights coming up. But personally, I think that if we can overcome the amount of promoters, like Bob Arum, Al Heyman, you got Eddie Hearn trying to make these fights happen. I think we can just, come down to a deal where everybody can just, share the bag. I mean, if you have 2 champions, I think it should be, either 60-40, 50-50. I mean, anything. But, nowadays money runs everything. A lot of these fighters, they just want to get money. Obviously they're still hungry for titles, but I think that you should give what the fans want to see, and just like you and me, where you're a trainer but you're still a fan, that's what drives you every day. That's something that will take boxing to being on top again. But going down even over in heavyweight, I mean, heavyweight, we got a lot of fights going on. I mean, obviously I hear that there's talks about Fury against Joshua. Hopefully that happens soon. Personally, I think Fury is the best fighter in heavyweight. I think he has the skill set to beat anybody in that heavyweight division. Obviously, Joshua, after the loss against Ruiz, he was able to make his fixes and come back and beat him again. But that Fury fight against Joshua, that's something everybody don't see. But personally, I think Fury is just going to dominate. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Tyson Fury is on a different level than everybody in that heavyweight division. I think it's his heavyweight division to lose. I don't see anybody beating him. The only person I can see it, and it's just because of his raw punch power, is Deontay. But I think that fight, I think he kind of exposed Deontay. If you're big enough and you can take his shots enough to back him up, Deontay just didn't know how to fight backing up. And once you have a big dude like Tyson Fury hanging on you and backing you up, it's and he's closing the range where you can't extend your right hand away. That's a different situation. And I think if they fight again, it'd be a similar situation. But of course, Deontay has the ability to catch him. But I think that fight a rematch between those two would end pretty similar to the last fight. I think Tyson knows how to fight him now. He would, I think it would probably be quicker and probably more brutal than the last fight. And then Joshua is a hell of an athlete. I just don't know. I think he proved a little to me coming in that second fight against Andy Ruiz. being smart enough to be able to know, hey, I can't exchange with this guy. But I don't think he's just not on Tyson Fury's level. I think Fury probably stops him inside 7 rounds. Kind of similar to the Deontay fight. I think he just backs Joshua up and kind of bullies him. But once Fury, I think Fury only has 2-3 more fights left, he said.
Yeah.
And he'll be ready to go. And we'll see where the division takes off after that. I'm not sure how much longer Joshua and Wilder will be there either. But if they can stay until Fury retires, they'll have a chance to get the belts back. Well, Joshua still has belts, but I'm not sure the date of that fight. But I think that'll be the last time he'll hold that belt for a while. So we'll see. I think that heavyweight division's Tyson's to lose. I think everybody sees that. I'm not sure there's many people that think Joshua's going to win, at least not in my circles. But you never know. It's heavyweight. The good thing about heavyweight boxing is even when you're pretty sure someone's going to win, there's always that chance that a big man can land that punch. We'll see. It's going to be hard to beat Tyson, man. It's going to be hard to beat Tyson.
I know. Yeah. I mean, Tyson is the kind of guy that, he went through a lot through his life, after that Klitschko fight. He has some addictions, and I heard he was up to like over 350 pounds. He was overweight. Then Joshua came into the play, beat Klitschko, and then was able to be the top dog in there. And then Tyson Fury, worked his butt off, and he was able to come back and come back to his fighting shape. And, that's something to appreciate. I feel like, Fury going through those tough moments after he was the top dog after beating Klitschko, I think it's what, it's why he has that kind of mentality. That's why I feel like he's going to get out of the division unbeaten. And I think that, with his skills that we haven't seen, I mean, his quickness, he fights like a welterweight, middleweight, that, he's able to he's not even in the greatest shape, but his hands are something that we had never seen. His slickness, like you said, with Wilder, the way that he was able to get up from that knockout, it was incredible. After Wilder knocked him out in the first fight, I was like, my God, no way that guy's getting up. He just stood up and won the rest of the fight.
That shows his mental strength. And when you're battling mental illness, that's a fight in itself, and he beat it, and that's an everyday battle for him. But I think his mental strength, I think people knew before the Klitschko fight. So I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but Klitschko training for, I forget who he was training for. Who was he training for? I think it was Tony Thompson, brought in Tyson Fury as a sparring partner years ago when Klitschko was the champ. And Klitschko was known to sit in the sauna for long periods of time with the temperature higher than normal, right? And nobody could, stay as long as Klitschko. And Klitschko did it to kind of just bolster his confidence, knowing that, hey, no one could stay in here longer. Well, Tyson heard about that. So when he was a young sparring partner for him, they both went into the sauna at the same exact time. And Tyson said he knew he was going to fight Klitschko one day. So he would, regardless of if he had to pass out in that sauna, he wasn't going to leave that room.
Wow.
So the story goes that sauna keeps going higher and higher. And then the longer the time. And Tyson is telling the story saying, I thought I was going to die in there. I didn't think I could stay in there long enough to beat him, to stay longer than. But he knew he had to, because he knew if it would be a mental advantage if he did. Well, eventually, he would get up and shadow box, just to, I guess, prove to Klitschko, hey, I'm good. I'm not going nowhere. So Klitschko gets up and leaves the sauna. And he tells the story At that moment, he knew he was going to beat Klitschko for the heavyweight championship.
Wow.
So fast forward a couple years, going forward, he gets to fight with Klitschko. And at the final press conference, he looked Klitschko in the eye and says, "Do you remember when you brought me in as a sparring partner and I outlasted you in the sauna? That's why I know I'm going to beat you on Saturday night." And and damn if you didn't. And I think that really messed with Klitschko's psyche. And I think you saw that if you watched that fight. There was nobody beating Tyson that night. And I think that's the one thing with Tyson is if he's in the right mental state, it's going to be hard to beat that dude. You talked about it briefly when he got hit in that last round against Deontay. I didn't even know he was going to leave that ring without a stretcher.
Yeah.
But he gets up before the count of 10 and finishes the bell. I still had him winning the fight because I think the only 2 rounds I had him losing that fight was the 2 rounds he got dropped. And he gets up, finishes with a draw. But that's that fight that he's coming off that mental illness blooming up to. I don't even know how high he got up to, 400 pounds, maybe. I'm not quite sure. But that stems back to the mental aspect of the sport, that there's very few sports that compare to it, because, you hear the saying all the time, you can play football, you can play soccer, you can play any sport. You can't play boxing.
Yep.
You just can't. And if you go in that mindset of, doing a half-assed, you're going to get yourself hurt. Whereas other sports, you might, get cut, might have to retire, whatever the case may be. But in boxing, you can lose your life, man.
Yeah.
You can lose your life if you're not preparing yourself correctly. Even when you do prepare yourself correctly, over the years, Duck Hugh Kim versus Ray Mancini. When Ray Mancini, it was a war. If you ever get a chance, watch that fight. It was back in the 80s. Duck Hugh Kim died. And Duck Hugh Kim was in tip-top shape, trained his butt off for that fight.
Yeah.
Dedishev, that happened at the MGM in Maryland. He trained his butt off for the fight, still died, So that mental aspect is so important in the sport of boxing, so important. And we tell our fighters all the time, if you have any doubts going in that ring, you shouldn't be in that ring.
Exactly.
Boxing is one of those sports, and I think it's in every sport. Baseball player going up to plate, you have to have that mentality. I'm going to hit this ball. I don't care what I have to do. I'm putting this ball in play. Football, I'm going to make this touchdown. Boxing, you got to go in that ring saying, I don't care what this guy, puts in my way. I'm going to beat him. I'm going to beat this dude. And you have to, if you don't have that mentality, you shouldn't be in that ring,
Exactly. No, for sure. I mean, you talk about something that, everybody goes through every day. I mean, it's just mental part of any kind of sport. I feel like it's more important than physical sport, because anybody can go to the gym, work out hours and hours and hours. But if you're not there mentally, man, it does not matter. You know what I mean? It does not matter. And, like you said with Tyson Fury, I mean, I feel like that he is way more mentally strong than anybody else in that division, or maybe, one of the top, mentally strong people in the whole sport, or any sport. I mean, for everything that he's gone through. So I feel like that's a major part of his game. Obviously his skill set is amazing, but that mental part is something that can separate a champion from a regular boxer, and him more than anybody else, that, if you're not mentally prepared in there, because like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if you don't stick to that plan after you get hit in the face, that everything goes down, and you pretty much lost a fight already. So, something that always comes to play. So to wrap it up real quick, I just wanted to see, what are your top five fighters of all time, or your top three, whatever you like to know. I know you're a huge, Sergio Martinez fan, growing up and everything. I was as well, but yeah, what are your thoughts now? What do you think are your top five?
Yeah, so I'll put probably the top two in order, but I would have to put you put me on the spot. Got to put Willie Pep in there.
Yep.
Love Willie, old time kind of guy. Got to put, of course, Sergio Martinez. He was probably one of my favorite fighters from the 2010s.
Yep.
Uh, favorite, I feel like you always got to put a heavyweight there. Uh, favorite heavyweight, probably Chris Berg.
Yep.
He was a slick southpaw heavyweight, different type of heavyweight. That's what I liked about him. And then my two favorite fighters, number two would have to be Archie Moore.
Yep.
And then the number one is Nicolino Lachey from Argentina. A lot of people don't know him, but defensive genius, kind of a clown in the ring in a sense. He was one guy that I don't try to teach my fighters this, but he didn't train. He would smoke a couple packs a day of cigarettes. He would jump in the ring and then just make people look like a fool. And in a way, that's something I admire, even though that wasn't me. That's not what I want my fighters to be. But I think as a fan, I think that's something to admire, that this guy never reached his potential and still became a world champion and considered one of the greatest defensive fighters. I would also put in Jersey Joe Walcott. I love Jersey Joe. Slick, could move. Most of my favorite fighters are slick guys that can move. That's kind of how I was as a fighter, and I like to see it as a fan. So I'd say those are my top 5 or 6 favorite fighters.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. I mean, that's the one thing that, it comes from being a trainer, is that you get so much knowledge from fighters that, not a lot of people have heard of, you know what I mean? For me, I think that, my favorite fighters, I think obviously I'm going to be a little biased for me coming from Puerto Rico, but I've always been that, I've always been a huge fan of that Mexican style fighting, where just, come forward. Obviously that makes the best fights. But I mean, I'd say for me, probably, Tito Trinidad, always been one of my favorites, huge puncher, kind of guy that would try to finish a fight as soon as he see somebody hurt. I'd say somebody like Joe Calzaghe too as well, great champion for Wells. Not a lot of people know about him, but I think he's one of the best light heavyweight, fighters of all time, super middleweight, undefeated. Obviously, for me, you got Sugar Ray Leonard. I feel like so he's been the kind of fighter that, as everybody knows, he was never scared of fighting anybody. You know what I mean? And that's why I got Wilfredo Benitez too. Great defensive fighter. He was in that golden age of boxing, where you had great champions, and he fought Leonard a couple times, lost to him, but I think those were great fights. And somebody like Marquez, and Marco Antonio Barrera, all those Mexican fighters that just fought each other. You know what I mean? Those fighters that were never scared. Even though they took losses in their careers, obviously, they were never scared. And that's something that I loved. The lights were never too bright for them. And my favorite of all time, obviously Pacquiao. I've always been a huge Pacquiao fan. 8 division champ, something that we never seen. Until to this day, being one of the top dogs, took his losses as well, but he was able to bounce back. And it's always been a very exciting fighter, and obviously the way that he's able to balance his off the gym life, off the ring life, with him being a senator, basketball player, singer, he's done it all. I think that's one of my favorite things about him, how he's able to separate certain things from the rest of his life, and I think that he's a great role model. But anyways, I mean, just wanted to wrap it up. I appreciate you joining me and giving some of your amazing knowledge, and I got to learn a little more about the sport of boxing, just talking to you. And I hope that we have another interview soon. I mean, I know we have great fights coming up, and I would love to have you join me again, anytime. You're a buddy of mine, so appreciate your time, and good luck with your fighters. I know that, you got great fights coming up, and you're going to be good, man. You have that experience under you that that from hearing, you know, the kind of knowledge and the kind of way that you approach boxing is something that you don't hear a lot. So I appreciate it a lot, Brady. Hopefully, you know, we'll get to do this again. It was great. And yeah, any final thoughts?
No, I just appreciate you having me on. We go way back, so anytime you want me back on, you just phone call away, brother.
Oh yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening in. You know, more content coming out. You know, from the fight game, from real estate, everything you guys can think of. So I'm happy to have Brady again as my first guest, and we got a lot good more content coming out. So stay tuned, guys.